In this clip, I'll run you through the concept of MPC4000 parts and multis, and their relationship to programs and key groups. This should also be similar for the Akai Z4 and Z8 samplers too. This is something I get asked quite a lot, usually by those coming from earlier MPCs and Akai rack samplers. So hopefully this paints a clearer picture of the relationship and concepts for people diving into a 4000 Z4 or Z8 sampler for the first time. For best viewing, I recommend watching the clip on a laptop or larger display, such as a TV, desktop computer, etc. Put the clip in full screen mode and set the resolution to 1080p via the settings widget down on the bottom right. If you enjoy the clip, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, feel free to share, and if you're after sample packs, then check out store.tonelab.au, where you'll find sample packs ready to play in your sampler's native format. Last of all, if you need production lessons or other technical services, you can book one-on-one remote sessions. Check the description below for details. With the blatant self-promotion out of the way, and to provide a little context, the 4000 was quite a leap forward from previous MPCs, as it more or less merged the Akai rack mount universe in with the MPC universe. And to be honest, I'm still in awe of how they pulled this off, because the 4000's operating system is the most comprehensive yet stable sampler OS I've ever laid hands on. Essentially, the development of the 4000 marked the original company's last flagship sampler, before the Akai Pro division was sold off to InMusic in 2005. In a nutshell, the 4000 included most, actually it's probably safe to say all, the features found in their previous flagship rack sampler, which, if I remember correctly, was the S6000. And in addition to that, you also had all the features found in the last hugely popular MPC, which was the MPC4000 XL. And mind you, those features were ported across with incredible enhancements. I often quip, they could have called the MPC4000 the MPC2000 XXXL, because it really does expand greatly on the features found in the 2000 XL. But where the 4000 differs from the 2000 XL is where the rack sampler integration comes into play. Instead of just the traditional drum programs that you'd find in the earlier MPCs before the 4000 also came with key group programs, denoted throughout the 4000 as initials KG. This meant you could plug a MIDI cable in tethered to your MIDI keyboard and play one sample that stretched across the keybed chromatically. And despite MPCs not having this functionality prior to the 4000, key groups were very much a staple feature of every Akai rack sampler since the S900 way back in '86. And so, how a drum program differs from a key group is the fact that you can allocate a single sample to a key group and then edit the range of keys across the keyboard, otherwise referred to as the key span, by designating a low note and then a high note. Then that sample will appear across each key of your keyboard range chromatically, opposed to the drum program, where it was a simple case of choose a pad and allocate a sample to it. And so drum programs have no key range per se. It's a simple case of each pad is designated a single note number representing a key on a keyboard. But I should probably mention a single key group, or drum program for that matter, can actually have up to 4 layers, with different samples in each layer, otherwise referred to as zones. However, in terms of key group programs, those layers are subject to the same key span belonging to that particular key group. With all that taken into consideration, from the MPC sequencer standpoint, you could set your track type as instrument, cursor down to track output 1 or 2, select part as your track destination, then choose a part number and cursor across to the part field to dial in a key group program from memory. Then play or record it from a MIDI keyboard So you're getting a piano-like experience, but from the MPC. Previous to the 4000 on an MPC, to get anything like this, you would have to go into your drum program and configure your pads to chromatic tuning, then allocate a sample to each pad, which is quite painstaking when you consider there's at least 64 pads to configure, and 64 pads equates to a little more than 5 octaves of a keyboard. So not a great deal, but if you had to, you would do it that way. And I'm definitely one guilty of that. However, with the multi-feature fully integrated into the 4000, essentially this allows you to add wave samples from memory into KeyGroup or drum programs, then add those programs into these numbered multi-parts that you can see down the left here. A multi can hold up to 128 parts, and the 4000 can hold, I think, up to 128 multis. So then, what exactly constitutes a multi? Well, in the simplest of terms, a multi is a multi-timbral configuration. Its basic purpose is to manage where programs and keygroup programs sit in relation to part numbers, plus what their levels and output settings are, what effect buses and effects they use, and as the multi is a direct reflection of the part mixer, not to be confused with the pad mixer, you can view numerical reads on your graphic mixer from the multi-view. Further to that, you can edit the MIDI receive channels per each part. And you can also define a part's key span via the span soft key here too, which might be handy if you want to set up some quick splits with drums in the first octave, bass in the second, keys in the third, etc., etc. But if you're going to do that, you will need to set the part MIDI channels to receive on the same channel. In addition to that, those on the 4000, opposed to the Z4 or Z8, will need to circumnavigate the sequence's routing by configuring your track output destination to either internal port A or B, depending on which MIDI input your MIDI keyboard is tethered to. Then you'll be able to trigger any number of parts configured to the same MIDI channel. So just to reiterate, the rule of thumb to remember is your samples go into programs or keygroup programs, then add your programs to parts, and those parts belong to and are managed by the multi, which you can then save and load with or without programs and samples. So if we create a new multi, cursor up to multi, then hit open window, hit the new soft key, then nominate how many parts your multi has to offer. You can have a multi with as little as 1 part all the way up to 128 parts. Hit the do it soft key when you're done. Some of you might be thinking, why is it even a thing to offer me any number of parts? Why not just give me 128 and I'll use whatever I need? Well, there's a little more to the multi than just drum and keygroup programs. The multi also configures the mixer, which sums up all your drum and keygroup programs, along with individual output routing, plus the effects sends per part. So my theory is there's probably system resources that need to be reserved to provide more overhead to multis with larger part numbers, or maybe it's something to do with the way the mixer sums that many tracks with respect to output buses, dynamic ranges, etc., etc. However, as a rule of thumb, if you don't need more than a dozen or so parts per multi, then keep it to a sufficient minimum. Having said all that, some might ask, when would I ever need more than one multi? Which is a fair question, because if you've never known about multis, then you've probably gotten through life never needing more than one, which is all fine and good. But if you use the effects a lot, then a multi can come in handy, because a multi stores your effects and effect bus configuration along with your mixer settings. And if that doesn't help you in any way, shape or form, then you can copy a multi which can act as a backup to your mixer settings and effects. If we were to completely mess and fumble some effect parameters, then you can select the alternate multi to get back to where you were. Having said that, swapping out a multi that was responsible for creating a particular sequence can be like pulling the rug out beneath you, as sequence tracks refer to specific part numbers rather than the multis themselves. However, there are functions you can use to recall specific multis per sequence, such as program changes or bank select control changes. Just hit the Open Window button on your multi's number, found off to the right here, to configure the method to call up a specific multi. Then to recall a multi, configure a spare track's output destination to use an internal port and channel. Then via Step Edit, insert a program change or bank select event into that track to trigger the recall of a multi assigned with the same control change number. Even if you don't use any of these extensive features, it's good to know what they are and what it looks like if something goes wrong. Either way, they're there for you, so experiment, mess around with them, and maybe you'll find a way to incorporate them into your own workflow. If you found that useful, please like, subscribe, and feel free to share it with anyone who might find it useful too. Check out the Instagram profile, and there's more tutorials here on the channel too. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.